Okay, meanwhile, experts say Iran's grip on the Strait of Hormuz is weakening as reports suggest the U.S. is getting ready to announce new sanctions on Tehran.
Our own Trey Yingst joins us now with the latest. Trey, good morning.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. Reports indicate that vessels crossing out of the Strait of Hormuz are up 400% over the past 2 weeks. This comes as the United States Navy is overseeing other vessels in the Persian Gulf that have millions of barrels of crude oil on board through a safer passage to the south of the strait. In the backdrop, there is an ongoing U.S. naval blockade, and fresh sanctions are expected for Iran next week.
If Trump decides to take further action, our response, our retaliation, will be seismic. First, we will tell all neighboring countries and countries around the world not to join the United States in its economic war. Any country that takes part in imposing economic restrictions on us will be regarded as an enemy. Of course, we will first negotiate with them. We will hold talks and tell them to step aside and distance themselves from the United States. But if they do not act, we will strike. We will target that country's interests.
Iran's parliament speaker and top negotiator Mohammad Ghalibaf posted to X over the weekend saying we've received numerous messages from neighboring countries about shaping new security arrangements and economic cooperation in the region. The United States put the security of every single one of its allies at such risk through bullying and pure disregard for their interests for the sake of Israel. Now, while President Trump indicated that talks with Iran have stopped, he says the United States is having trouble figuring out who to deal with inside of Iran.
In fact, it's actually one of my biggest problems. I don't know who the hell to deal with. It's a problem. It's the only country in the world where nobody wants to be president. They say, who wants to be president? No, I don't want to be president. So it's a little bit of a problem.
The U.S. military presence in the Middle East is expected to remain with no clear path forward to end the conflict with Iran. Now, the USS Abraham Lincoln is headed home after being deployed for 274 days. This aircraft carrier made its last port call in December, breaking a Navy record. The vessel is being replaced by the Japan-based USS George Washington. Right now, the region is stuck in a cycle of military threats and statements from both sides. But the economic impact on Iran is being felt today. Inflation at one of its highest points in Iranian history. Just about an hour ago, the Iranian rial passed 2 million to $1 US. Guys?
Wow, that's incredible. All right, Trey Yingst, live and
Thanks, Trey.
Thank you, Trey.
Okay, with that, let's bring in Fox News contributor Kellyanne Conway, former counselor to President Trump. So great to have you on this momentous day.
Start your engines.
Yes, indeed.
Right.
So obviously, we've been spending a lot of time talking about this race today, but the midterms are still coming up. And of course, looming over the midterms is what we're watching unfold in the Middle East. How do you see all of that playing out in the election?
So, first of all, thanks for having me. Everything looks great today. I love the patriotism and optimism that attends to these Freedom 250 events. And I think that tells you why President Trump did what he did in Iran. He's been consistent from the beginning. We cannot allow Iran to be nuclear capable. And I think this week you had everybody from Secretary Chris Wright at Energy saying, look, you've still got 9 million barrels per day coming through the Strait of Hormuz, 14 million in the outer area coming through. Scott Bessent, our Treasury Secretary, said we can apply maximum economic pressure to Iran and never have to engage our military. And the president himself has said he's in this until we claim victory. I think Iran is trying to tap President Trump and the Republicans until the midterms. They know they've got a sympathetic ear from the coddlers and the enablers on the left, which makes no sense to me. We have a lot of Jewish Democratic senators. One is the Senate Minority Leader. And they're turning their backs on Israel and America in favor of Iran. Look, let's review how we got here. Iran was on the doorstep of becoming nuclear capable, of becoming the next North Korea, including the way they treat their own people. And nothing had worked. The sanctions didn't work, giving them pallets of billions of dollars of cash, and the JCPOA and delisting the Houthis as a foreign terrorist organization on day 3 of the Biden administration didn't work. So the president didn't start a new war. He's trying to finish one that's 5 decades old.
Okay, so Kellyanne, you're a pollster. I know you're looking at the poll numbers of how people feel about this war, and they're not great. And I spoke earlier today with a couple of young people, which is an important constituency, and both left and right said, we don't like the war.
Of course.
And every time the president seems to have a deal, his poll numbers go up. People want, and I was just in the Midwest, which is a great way to get a good feel for how people feel. They weren't moralizing about the war, saying they like this or like that, but they did say consistently to me, wrap it up. We want him to wrap it up. We want to get on with this. So what are you looking at it as a pollster, looking at the midterms? What do you think? What are your thoughts on this, given what I've just
Well, it does have
out?
an impact. Nobody likes war, first of all, but we want to keep it over there, not over here. And the president is doing what he's doing in the Mideast to help people in the Midwest longer term. This president takes the long view on everything. And he has said he can't put war on an egg timer. We've been there for 6 months. Everybody would like it wrapped up. It needs to be wrapped up successfully and completely for us to feel that the next president of the United States, commander-in-chief, doesn't face a nuclear-capable Iran. So there's no question about that. I also think it needs to be explained by those who are running for office down ballot. And they've got a great, Rachel, they've got a great economic package to sell to America. They need to tell people about that. It's not just the one big beautiful bill. It's the dereg. It's the energy independence. Only President Trump could be guiding us through this moment because he made us energy independent not once but twice. We are net exporters of natural gas and oil for the first time in American history again. And he has improved our relationship with those Gulf state countries. But look, I do think when it comes to affordability, when it comes to safety, security, opportunity, optimism, patriotism, the Republicans should distinguish themselves to the other side. Let me say a couple things about the polls, if I may, just very quickly. One is President Trump's numbers were always higher than his polls reflected and continue to be. The DSA is supposed to win by 20 points. We're confusing vibes with votes, and we're confusing energy and enthusiasm with actual turnout. And I want to say a quick thing about data centers, because we're very involved in polling in this space. You got to create FOMO instead of NIMBYism. You have to make people see the data center dividend from the beginning. If we're going to be part of this technological revolution yet again as a nation, then we need to have data centers to power that AI revolution. I understand why people don't like the noise and the unsightliness, but we need to show them in Washington State, for example, where a data center has existed for a while now, they built a $15 million aquatic center. People have to go in and say, we're going to do 10 data centers in the next 5 years. We're looking at 15 locations. We'd like you to be one of them. Here are the benefits: better schools, higher home values, more police officers perhaps, and all the benefits that attend to that. But we're in it, look, whether it's the midterms in the Iran war or it's data centers, we're in a DoorDash, Uber right now, show me right now, give me benefits now mentality, and that's tricky.
So you were talking about all the polls you're looking at. Very quickly, before we run out of time, I did want to ask you, because the Democrats seem to have a civil war in their hands. They can't decide on whether or not Washington and Jefferson have a better view of a vision for America than Lenin and Marx. The one thing they do agree on is that if they win one or both House and Senate, they're going to launch a slew of investigations into President Trump and this administration. What are you seeing on that front?
Well, they are. That's all they know how to do. They don't have a policy argument. They don't have a positive, optimistic, capitalist message to sell to Americans. I think the face of the Democratic Party is Hassan Piker, who lives in a $3 million home in Los Angeles, drives a $200,000 Porsche. I don't begrudge him that, but those are the fruits of capitalism.
And then he went to Cuba. He went to Cuba with his designer gear on.
That person who just won the woman in she was just she just did a Zoom in Uruguay, because there are lots of swing voters in Uruguay in her district. So I think people need to wake up. The other face of the Democratic Party this time is Graham Plattner's Nazi tattoo. I don't think you can wash that stench and that stink off. And here's a problem for the Democratic Party. It's so passé right now to even say defund the police, men and women's sports, impeach Trump. Those all feel so 2020.
Abolish ICE.
It all feels so 2020. They've moved far more to the left. And the problem for the Democratic Party is how many of them are now going to follow. When I think big tent, I think more Hispanics, African Americans, labor union households, Jewish Americans, Catholics, all these political independents, young men, all these constituencies President Trump grabbed in 2024 and compelled to vote for him. I don't think of big tent as being this circus of the Democrats of including more anti-Semitic, more anti-American folks, so I think, look, the squad's going to double in number from 7 to 14 probably after this election. I don't think AOC got some trouble this week. They're rejecting Biden, Harris. I think even the Clintons and Obamas are in trouble because Barack Obama commemorated 9/11 all 8 years as president. He didn't say we deserved it the way Hassan Piker and his endorsed candidates do. He did not do Medicare for all. So he served in the United States Senate. He didn't abolish the Senate. So the Democratic Party is having an identity crisis.
Yep.
They're going to launch investigations, and they're going to and folks, I need you to know, if you vote Democrat and they take over, it's investigations and impeachment. It's not tax cuts and deregulating small business.
And as you point out, the polling, especially with these socialist candidates, has been just wildly off, and there ought to be some major reckoning.
But you got to trust real pollsters, not these media pollsters.
You also need to trust the American people.
Yes.
They have some legit concerns with candidates.
Kellyanne Conway, thank you for being here.
You got it.
Enjoy the day.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.